This is a slide from some time ago when we were first looking at traffic analysis, and the red lines are the outward bound westbound traffic, and the blue ones the inward bound traffic. The Lone Deep buoy, as you see, is a south cardinal buoy, and we identified that almost all of the outward bound traffic is going to the north of the south cardinal buoy. Something's wrong. We actually moved it and deployed another buoy there, but it was real necessity, and we knew that through the analysis that we had to do something, and do it fairly quickly. Jerry will talk more about GIS overlays, but AIS traffic analysis alone won't actually suffice. You need to actually compare it with other layers, and we have there the sectors and ranges of lights in the similar area, the southwest area of the UK. I've overlaid there, with GIS overlay, the leisure routes, again feed into my assessment of whether we need to maintain, increase, reduce in range, and seriously consider the floating aids. On top of that, I'll lay the track analysis. But you can see that, once again, 4 weeks there, really busy. Doesn't actually tell me too much about them. It is busy in all the areas. But if I go down to one day, the worst day, you can see that actually I can start and really make a good assessment. Overlaying the sectors and ranges of the lighthouses, I'm starting to be able to make a real judgment together with our navigation committee as to whether we can adjust the lights. And indeed we are starting to be able to reduce lights in some areas down to 18 nautical miles. Peter Kelly mentioned yesterday about the savings on a reduction we're making at one of our lighthouses start point. Taking it down to 9 miles, it means significant benefit in the engineering requirements for that lighthouse, but also significant benefit in the availability of that lighthouse. There will be improved availability, but we've done it on real underpinned risk assessment due to the traffic analysis. Renewable energy sites, I mentioned them earlier. This is a proposed site off the Wash on the east coast of England. We had the site. What I want to know is how to mark it. Do we need an additional voyage? What's the traffic there? And there it is. And you can see actually, when we looked at it, much of the traffic in that area was actually the survey vessels looking at the 2 proposed wind farms in that area. The orange area is an extension of those wind farms. What I can do now is actually overlay the positions of our AIS navigation, come direct from the database, live information, and I know exactly where they are. As you can see by that slide, the ATOMs actually are well placed and in the right position, unlike the Lone Deep buoy. And the vessels are going to be going close. Some of the proposed renewable energy wind farm sites in the English waters, UK waters I should say, will mean significant constriction of traffic, and they're going to be going within half a mile in some cases of the boundaries of the wind farms, and we really need to consider what mitigation measures are needed there to keep the vessels, all mariners, safe. AIS navigation. Very useful, I would suggest, for new wreck or obstruction marking, perhaps shoal marking, general ATOM provision. But before a decision can be made on whether a physical or electronic aid is required, we must determine who needs to see that ATOM and on a suitable display. My point that if they need to see that ATOM on a display, the MKD really won't work. And unfortunately at the moment carriage requirements and manufacturers' specifications are such that many, unfortunately most mariners, cannot see message 21 on the appropriate display. So we need to think about that when we're deciding where we're going to put the AIS ATOMs. However, we just talked about the banned shoal buoy that we deployed to ensure that vessels actually conform with Rule 10, or to help them conform with Rule 10. And in the future, after sufficient promulgation, maybe a year or a little bit more, could we replace banned shoal buoy with a virtual or a real AIS? We need to think about it. The decision has to be real synthetic or virtual, and is it appropriate? Yep, okay, thanks. Limitations in the use of AIS: wrong draft, wrong destination, wrong time, wrong status, all affect the assessment I'm making. The coverage is dependent on terrestrial frequencies, as John talked about earlier on, and currently mandatory carriage only covers SOLAS vessels. point there that the one vessel, the Putford Shore, I mentioned earlier on when we were looking at the 15-metre depth, is a 15-metre vessel declaring a 12.2-metre draft? I don't think so. There's a slide showing the vessels with how many vessels in that one are showing a 0-metre draft. I don't think they're going to be 0. So, thanks very much.
Thank you, Captain Barker. The next speaker is Gary Bryan, Manager Navigation Safety on the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Gary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. My presentation today is, I suppose, from a manager's perspective. We've seen a lot of detail about AIS data analysis this morning. What I'm really going to focus on is how we use AIS data within GIS to solve problems that commonly arise in relation to the provision of ATON. I'll cover, firstly, a background on GIS. I'll look at what sort of data bank AMSA has access to in terms of AIS data and how we're using it or planning to use it. Also then look at, very briefly, at some data analysis issues, some of which will be familiar to what we've seen this morning. And then I'll want to cover a GIS capability that AMSA has developed in more recent times, which we find is providing great assistance to us with the sort of issues that arise on a regular basis, both from a policy or planning perspective, but also from an operational perspective. And I finally wanted to just briefly touch on a database we're developing in relation to ATON information, which ties in a bit with where I think IALA is going with consistency of ATON information that will sort of flow through to the implementation of e-navigation. Just quickly, a definition, fairly common definition for GIS, and I think one that won't read it out, but I think it definitely sort of covers all the sort of uses that we found for GIS. Even though it's obviously dates back a bit. The systems have evolved considerably, but I think the definition still holds true. In terms of the functions of a GIS, it's obviously a data entry function. Certainly a data display is what we really focus on in terms of the leverage we can get out of such a system. Data management is becoming increasingly an issue in terms of the volumes, particularly we see that with AIS, data volumes are significant. So we need to really efficiently manage that, and from a historical point of view it becomes quite important as well in terms of how long we keep data and how we store that and access it. And that's covered through information retrieval, and then what we're particularly interested in, of course, is analysis. In terms of the sources of data we could put into a GIS, digitised and scanned data is one that we commonly use. Most organisations have considerable numbers of databases with a range of information, and AIS comes under that category. Certainly, from what we've found is that going out to our ATON sites, we actually take a portable DGPS data logger, and we're finding that that information could be very useful in the work that we do in relation to ATON sites, whether it be for planning new constructions or dealing with environmental and other site issues. And of course, the use of photography, other digital images is particularly useful and can be integrated into a GIS. Here's I suppose a model of displaying sort of types of layers of information that you expect to have in a GIS, but what I've done here is trying to adapt it to what AMS has actually been using, particularly from an ATON perspective, but also more broadly in the organisation. So it can be information as diverse as